So here's the project for Shape of You. You can tell that it's a pretty straightforward song and there's a lot of repetition going on. So let's have a listen to the intro. This is pretty repetitive intro. Now let's get to the verse, which is exactly the same.
Club isn't the best place to find a lover, so the bar is where I go. Me and my friends at the table doing shots, drinking fast, and then we talk slow.
And the only part that it starts getting any different is actually the post-chorus, which sounds like this.
You every day discovering something brand new. Well, I'm in love with your body. I'm in love with your body.
And it's basically the same thing as well. So that's the pattern for Shape of You. Let's get into it. Now, the most important section of it is, of course, the opening riff. And that is actually played by two instruments. A kalimba, which is an alchemy instrument. And you can find it under kalimba morph. And I just moved it slightly from kalimba box to YouTube, which is quite an interesting name. So that gave this particular kind of sound. It's pretty similar to the original sound, but we needed a bit more of that kalimba type sound. And this one is your standard kalimba under World African kalimba, and it sounds like this. So when you put it together, I actually put two tracks, and what you can do with two tracks is to select two tracks, and then you right click, and then you go to create track stack. And from the track stack, you can have a folder stack or a summing stack. And I use a summing stack. In this case, it sums into this sum tree stack. And when you have a stack like that, you can just put your MIDI on top here, and it will play both tracks. And here's how it sounds. So the pattern is generally a similar pattern throughout, except for slight variations that you can pick up when you hear it on the project itself. So the next thing we go to is the low end of that, and that is a bit like an African marimba that we found here. World African marimba. And it plays the low end and it sounds like that. Think about it as the bass line of that combination, if you will. And together they sound like this. So it's pretty straightforward. And then you get this loopy type stuff. And in the record, I'm pretty sure Ed Sheeran just loops some guitar sounds that he plays on his body, which is known to do. On the guitar body, that is. And yeah, so I picked something that I could find within Logic, and that is this World South American Spanish flamenco guitar. And what you have is this body sounds in the upper range that you can kind of use. So what I did here was this sounds here. So those string sounds, and here is sort of like the body sounds. And they loop, and these are two different tracks because I can treat them differently. For the stringing sounds, I added a channel EQ. I just boosted at the high end about 3.5 dBs just to give it a bit more string shine. And if you notice, some of these tracks are sent to bus 2, and bus 2 is a Space Designer track. And it's a small space, a room, and I use 0.9 second blue room. And that gave it a bit of that room vibe. It's not really that kind of big reverb sound, it's just sort of like a realistic room vibe. And that's how it's like on the track as well, so we did that. Now, the thing kind of goes on and on, repeats. You can hear that there's a slight variation in the high section here. Slight variations throughout the song, not very major, but they happen every now and then. And when you go to chorus, in the before that chorus, you kind of have a pause.
Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you.
And it kind of goes on, which is really interesting because normally in the chorus you kind of add more layers, but in this case, Sheeran didn't add more layers. He just kind of did exactly the same thing in the verse. Now, post-chorus, there's this whole section here. And here's where it gets interesting. The first thing is there's this super deep bass going on. And I use an alchemy track that is under the basses, an ultra sub bass, and I moved it to deep LFO. And you can hear it's like super deep. And it plays the same pattern. And then I added a little beat underneath, and this is kind of the basic beat that I use under a Drum Machine Designer track under Electronic Drum Machine Designer, Crate Digger. And this one is not the major sound, but it sort of lays the path for it. Very simple rhythm, and I believe he creates all these rhythms in the idea that he's going to recreate them with the looper. Now, with that, the kicks aren't heavy enough, so I added a layer of under drums and percussion, single drum kicks, electronic kicks, C113, and it sounds like this. Sorry. Just a bit more attack, and when you put them together, so that one gives sort of the reverb, the post-attack kind of sound, and this one has a lot of that attack and the depth about it. Now, you can have this sort of like rhythm sounds together with the drum sounds, and they sound like this. Just like little claps, and you can find them under drums and percussion, electronic drum kits, human body rhythm effects. And they're quite cool because they kind of sound like what you get in the track itself. Just a little like hat type thing, and you add it with the rhythm, it sounds like this. And that's pretty cool. And we added another snare as well because the snare was a little bit weak. So we found one under single drum snares, electronic snares, D148. And it sounds like this. Much snappier than the other one, but they kind of layer together pretty well. So I'm going to put them together, and here's how they sound. Just the pure percussion side. And with the bass, and you notice how the bass really pairs together with the kick, like this 1, 2, kick, 1, 2. I mean 1, 2, snare, 1, 2, snare, 1, 2. So here's how it sounds. And in between that, there is a track, which is like a little pad. And I use this thing called a mountain flute, mucked around with the settings a little bit, but pretty much the same. And of course, I send it to another bus. And this bus is a large bus. It's just a large space. You can see the hall, 4.7 seconds, prison main floor. That's a big reverb. Because it's kind of acting like a pad. And I want a reverb to be a bit pad-like, but there's some attack to it. So here's how it sounds. Now with everything, now that's the additional section for the post-chorus rhythm. But if you put it together with the marimba type stuff and the guitar loops, here's how it sounds. And throughout the song, it's just about taking out parts, muting them, or putting them back in, and that's how he creates the different dynamics within the song. And of course, with the vocals as well, and vocal production is really important.
I'm in love with your body, every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. When we let the story begin, we're going.
And that's it.